Picture St. Petersburg. It's the winter of 1829. And we're talking about a winter so aggressive, so unnaturally cold, that the Neva River didn't just freeze, it froze solid by October.
Which is incredibly early.
Right. You have historical reports of wolves, like actual wild wolves, crossing the ice right into the city center, prowling near the Winter Palace. It's a setting that feels less like a historical backdrop and honestly more like the end of the world.
It really creates this incredible claustrophobia, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which is the perfect atmospheric wrapper for the text we're covering in today's deep dive. We're looking at a manuscript titled The Snow Upon the Neva.
Which has a completely bizarre backstory all on its own. It was found in Venice in 1923, just hidden in a stack of completely unrelated papers. And it's attributed, controversially I should add, to Alexander Pushkin.
Yeah, that attribution is definitely the first layer of the mystery here.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it really is Pushkin, it's a massive radical departure from his known works. We're used to him as the romantic poet, the sharp social critic. But this is something else entirely.
It really is.
Whether he wrote it or not, the story inside is this wild genre bender. It's part historical fiction, part metaphysical thriller, and essentially it's a philosophical treatise on the nature of time.
And it's surprisingly modern in its concepts, too. So let's just get right into the narrative for the all. We start with our protagonist, Dmitri Nikolaevich Volkonsky. And usually in these 19th century Russian stories, you expect a dashing officer, right, or a revolutionary or some tortured artist. Dmitri is, well, he's none of those things.
Far from it. Dmitri is the ultimate everyman. He's a collegiate assessor, which, I mean, it sounds fancy to modern ears, but in the table of ranks back then, it was strictly mid-level bureaucracy.
Yeah, he just copies documents for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Exactly. He's lonely, he's extremely risk-averse, and he's keenly aware that he is a massive disappointment to his father, who comes from this long line of decorated warriors.
He's basically suffering from what we might call historical inadequacy. He feels incredibly small because his ancestors were these great men of history, and he's checking for typos in trade agreements.
Right, he's living entirely on autopilot. He eats his cabbage soup, he goes to bed, he just tries to stay warm. That is, until the inciting incident completely shatters that routine. He's walking down Gorokovaya Street one night and hears a scream.
And the typical Dmitri logic says, keep walking, don't get involved.
Exactly. That's the sensible survivalist thing to do in a city that cold and unforgiving.
But he doesn't. For whatever reason, he runs toward it.
He finds a woman named Vera being attacked by a man called Stepan Ilyich. And Dmitri intervenes, awkwardly I might add, because he has literally never been in a fight in his life. But he somehow manages to drive the attacker off.
And this is where the genre shift happens for the reader. This isn't just a mugging. The attacker, Stepan, vanishes into the shadows. He literally dissolves. And Vera looks at Dmitri and says, you should not have come.
Yeah, that's the loose thread that unravels his entire reality. Vera isn't some damsel in distress. She reveals that she's a fugitive from a group she calls the Operators.
Let's pause on that term for a second. Operators. It sounds so mechanical, almost industrial. What exactly are we dealing with here?
You can think of them as editors of reality. The text posits this idea that history isn't a fixed timeline. It's not a stone monument or a river flowing in one direction. It's a tapestry. And the Operators are individuals who originally started as scholars from the Library of Alexandria, actually, who found a way to pull the threads. They can reweave cause and effect.
So effectively, it's time travel.
Yes, but very distinct from the time machine trope we're used to in sci-fi. It's not about hopping into a machine and driving to a specific year. It's entirely about memory and perception. Vera explains to Dmitri that she has lived the same day twice, multiple times. She retains memories of timelines that have been deleted.
Which is a terrifying concept when you think about it. If they edit the timeline, does everyone else just forget the previous version?
They do. To the average person, the new history is the only history that ever existed. You wouldn't know you had a sister who was erased, or that a war didn't happen. Vera, and as we find out very quickly, Dmitri are exceptions. They're what the text calls vessels.
Explain that distinction for us. Why is Dmitri immune to the edit?
Well, it turns out the Volkonsky bloodline was genetically encoded with resistance techniques centuries ago. Think of Dmitri as a biological hard drive.
Yeah.
He carries this ancient knowledge on how to counter the Operators in his very blood, but it's encrypted. He has no idea he knows it.
He's a weapon that doesn't know where its own trigger is.
Precisely. And now that he's interfered with Stepan Ilyich, who's an Operator, he's on their radar, so they have to run.
This leads to the escape sequence, which is surprisingly visceral for what is essentially a philosophical text. They scramble out of a window onto an icy ledge, manage to make it to the harbor, and they board a Swedish merchant ship. They think getting on the water means they're safe.
But they forget that the operators control the conditions of history. The manuscript has this incredible description of the Gulf of Finland freezing over with unnatural, supernatural speed. The temperature drops so sharply that the wood of the ship just groans and splinters. The ship is instantly trapped in the ice.
Which sets up this amazing confrontation. They're stuck. They have to literally walk to shore across the frozen sea. And waiting for them out on the ice is Stepan Ilyich and his crew.
And this is the exact moment Dmitri finally wakes up. Stepan is taunting them, assuming Dmitri is just a useless clerk who got lucky in the alley. But under that extreme life-or-death stress, the encryption in Dmitri's blood finally breaks.
Does he suddenly know kung fu or something?
No, and that's what makes the writing so smart here. He doesn't gain physical strength, he gains insight. He looks down at the ice and stops seeing a flat, white, frozen surface. He starts seeing the geometry. He intuitively understands the stress lines, the tension points, the physics of the frozen water.
It's like weaponized structural engineering.
In a way, yeah. He presses his bare hand to a specific microscopic flaw in the ice, and the entire flow beneath their enemies just shatters. Stepan and his men drop straight into the freezing water. The text specifically called it knowledge expressing itself through action.
I love that differentiation. It's not magic bolts of lightning, it's understanding the physical world so deeply that you can dismantle it with a touch. So they survive the ice trap and retreat to this abandoned tower on the Estonian coast to regroup.
Right, and this tower becomes their training ground. Vera has to teach Dmitri how to access this ancestral memory intentionally, not just when he's panicking. But she also uses this time to explain the real stakes. Because the operators aren't just trying to kill them for getting in the way. They're planning something called the revision.
The revision, which sounds so corporate, like a quarterly review, but I assume it is significantly worse.
Oh, much worse. The operators want to reach all the way back to 48 BCE.
Caesar's fire. The burning of the Library of Alexandria.
Correct. Now, in the world of this manuscript, the library wasn't fully destroyed in 48 BCE. Portions of it survived, which kept ancient knowledge decentralized and out in the world. The operators want to go back and ensure total, absolute incineration.
But why? If they originally started as scholars from the library, shouldn't they want to save the books?
That's the core paradox of their faction. They want to be the sole gatekeepers of that knowledge. If the library burns completely to the ground, the secrets of time manipulation and ancient wisdom are permanently lost to the public, held only by their specific order. They essentially want to create a monopoly on truth.
Control the past, control the future. It's the standard authoritarian playbook, just supercharged with time travel.
Exactly. And to stop them, Dmitri has to go back to that exact moment. So Vera puts him through these grueling, almost meditative mental exercises, having him stare at candle flames for hours, forcing him to hold completely contradictory thoughts in his mind simultaneously, all to break his linear perception of time.
He has to learn how to think in 4 dimensions.
And it actually works. He connects with the memory of an ancestor named Nikolaos, who lived in Alexandria during the time of the fire. Through Nikolaos, he learns that the revision is scheduled for the vernal equinox, March 25th, 48 BCE.
So they have a date, and they have a method, because Vera wears this locket that contains a tiny fragment of papyrus from the original library, and that object acts as an anchor.
Right. So we reach the climax of the story. Dmitri projects his consciousness back 2,000 years, entirely inhabiting the body of his ancestor, Nikolaos.
And the description of Alexandria here is really worth noting for you listening. The source material paints it not as some dusky marble ruin like we often see in movies, but as this high-definition, vibrant metropolis. It's loud, it's colorful, the text describes the smell of spices and smoke in the air.
It feels incredibly alive. And occupying this space is the main antagonist, Theron. He's the head operator of that specific era. And Theron is such a fascinating villain because he genuinely believes he's the good guy here. He argues that human freedom is just chaos. He wants to build a perfect world by editing out all the mistakes, all the wars, all the pain.
Which, let's be honest, is a very seductive argument. Who doesn't want to erase human suffering?
Exactly. It's a heavy philosophical temptation. But Dmitri, acting through Nikolaos, teams up with a local resistance cell in the city, and they realize pretty quickly they can't just beat Theron in a sword fight. They have to steal the central source of the operator's power, which is called the Stone of Colony.
So it basically turns into the heist portion of the movie.
It really does. The stone is described as this heavy black rock with red striations, and it acts as the central server, so to speak, for their entire time manipulation network. To get it, Dmitri uses his newly unlocked abilities to create a time ripple.
How exactly does that work in the text?
He dilates perception. He manages to stretch 10 of his own heartbeats into 50. So to the guards outside the study, he appears to be moving normally. But to him and his ally Ammon, they have this massive window of expanded time to slip into Theron's study and grab the stone.
But just stealing it isn't enough, right? Because as long as the network itself exists, the operators can just eventually crack it down and take it back.
Right. Dmitri realizes in that moment he has to go completely scorched earth. He enters the metaphysical network. You have to imagine this sprawling web of glowing nodes that connects all the operators' anchors across centuries. And he decides to shatter the anchors not just in Alexandria, but in Rome, Constantinople, Baghdad, all at the exact same time.
He's totally crashing the server.
And Theron realizes what he's doing and tries to stop him. Not with physical force, but with a bribe. He offers to rewrite Dmitri's personal history. He says, I can make your father love you. I can erase all your loneliness back in St. Petersburg. You can be the great hero you always wanted to be.
And that really is the crux of his entire character arc. Dmitri has been miserable his whole life. He felt inadequate. Why wouldn't he take that deal?
Because through this journey, he realizes that a life without consequences isn't actually a life. It's just a script. He actively chooses the pain of reality over the comfort of a fabrication. He rejects Theron's offer and shatters the network.
The entire system collapses. But there's a serious body count.
There is. Back in the physical world of 48 BCE, Theron attacks them. Ammon dies trying to protect Dmitri. They have to literally burn the temple down around themselves to hide the evidence of their interference. And as the flames rise, Dmitri uses the papyrus anchor to violently pull his mind back to the present.
And when he finally wakes up back in the tower in Estonia,
The immediate threat is neutralized. The operators in the present, like Stepan Ilyich, were sustaining their unnatural lifespans with energy siphoned from that network. So when Dmitri crashes it, they rapidly age and die on the spot.
it's very much like the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yes, exactly like that. But Dmitri pays a massive price for this victory, too. The human mind just isn't designed to process thousands of years of ancestral memory all at once, or to channel that kind of destructive metaphysical energy.
So he's essentially broken by it.
He's fragmented, he escapes with Vera to the Adriatic coast, but he is actively fading. He spends his remaining time frantically writing down this manuscript, trying to record the truth before his own memory dissolves completely into the void.
There's such a tragic irony there. He saved the concept of human memory and history, but he completely loses his own in the process.
Yeah. The final image the text leaves us with is him as an old man, prematurely aged from the strain, just holding that tiny papyrus fragment.
Yeah.
He refuses to burn it. He keeps it as a physical symbol that shared knowledge, no matter how dangerous it might be, absolutely must be preserved.
And then the supposed editor of the manuscript adds a little footnote at the very end, right? Claiming they went looking for records of Dmitri and Vera in that specific Adriatic town.
And they found absolutely nothing. No birth records, no property deeds, no graves.
Which leaves us with this incredible final ambiguity. Was the whole thing just a delusion of a bored, freezing clerk in St. Petersburg? Or did they succeed so completely in their mission that they accidentally wrote themselves out of history?
Or even more terrifying, perhaps someone else came along and edited them out later.
That is a chilling thought. But it perfectly brings us back to the core theme of the manuscript. The operators wanted a clean, perfect history. Dmitri fought for a messy, chaotic one.
The story powerfully argues that our mistakes, our traumas, and our scars are exactly what define our humanity. If you edit out all the bad parts, you lose the necessary context for the good parts.
It really forces a heavy question onto you as the listener. If you had the edit button for your own life, if you could just delete that awkward conversation, that failed relationship, that one massive career mistake, would you do it?
And if you did, if you erased all those struggles, would the person remaining still actually be you?
It's a heavy, provocative question to end on, but that is our deep dive into The Snow Upon the Neva, a strange, beautiful Russian mystery that asks if we're brave enough to just live with our regrets. Thanks so much for joining us.
Until next time.